On August 22, U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin called on the Civil Reserve Air Fleet to support evacuation efforts underway in Kabul. The Department of Defense needed help transporting U.S. citizens and vulnerable Afghans from military bases in Europe and the Middle East after the Taliban's swift advance across Afghanistan forced more than 120,000 people to flee the country. A total of 18 aircraft from 6 airlines were activated. Each flight was staffed entirely by volunteers from the Air Reserve. Here are the stories of 2 volunteers. Lorin George has spent the last 35 years working as a flight attendant with American Airlines. Each year, she is registered for the Civil Reserve Air Fleet, a program in which airlines voluntarily assist the Defense Department during a time of crisis. In the late-night hours of August 23, her call finally came. Like much of the world, George was aware of the chaos unfolding on the ground in Afghanistan. So, when an American Airlines employee called to see if she still wanted to volunteer for the Civil Reserve, she knew exactly where she was going. George wasn't able to fall back asleep after she hung up the phone. Instead, her mind wandered, picturing what the coming days would look like. The American Airlines flight that she boarded in New York the following day was all but empty, just her, 10 other flight attendants and 4 pilots. The pilots gave a quick brief before takeoff, and the flight arrived at an Air Force base in Germany about 9 hours later. The whole experience seemed surreal, George explained, like something out of the movies. The refugees boarded the aircraft in an orderly fashion and found their seats. Some carried a bag, most had nothing. Some wore shoes, many were barefoot. Everyone was exhausted. George recalls bringing one Afghan woman her first hot meal in over a week, a thought that still brings her to tears. That was everything to this woman, George said. And it was story after story like that we heard from these passengers. That kept us going. The flight crew worked non-stop to care for the passengers over the next 27 hours. Aboard the flight were much-needed supplies, baby diapers and formula, amenity kits and clean clothes, crayons, coloring books and toys for the children. While the parents slept, the children set off to explore the airplane. Most people on board had never been flown before boarding the military aircraft that carried them out of Kabul. One child, whom George believed to be about 10, spoke English remarkably well. The young man offered to help the volunteers, shuttling cups of warm tea from the galley to the passengers, all while practicing his English with the crew. George was amazed at the courage of the passengers. Hundreds of people had piled onto a plane bound for an unknown destination and an uncertain future.